I'm going to welcome to the main stage, Ben John. Hey, Ben.
How's it going? Thank you so much for having me on here. I love the intro. I like what you got going on here.
I'm so glad. And I'm just like so intrigued by this whole topic because, like him or not like him, Grant Cardone is a polarizing individual. He's very charismatic. He has this reputation that is a little it's peppered with he's a con man, but at the same time it's like, but look what he's done. He's built these businesses from nothing. He's grown it. He's helping other people grow their businesses and all that. Can you tell us what was your involvement with Grant Cardone?
Yeah, so my involvement was I was a direct 10X business coach for his organization. And what that basically means is not only did I use his 10X programs, courses, and events to sell for him and implement into my company, but you're supposed to kind of adopt his thought process and mindset on how to scale a business.
Sure. Now, when you say, and this is a point that I've been a little confused on, when you say becoming a 10X coach, is there a program or some series of steps or training that you go through to become a 10X coach?
So specifically what that means is, I think the short answer is no, not at first. So here's how it worked with me. It's $25,000 and then it's $1,000 annually to become a 10X business coach with that organization.
You said $25,000 to start?
Yes.
For the training to become a 10X coach?
Exactly.
And then you can charge people money as a 10X coach.
Yeah, essentially you could do that before you even get the Cardone certification. So it's kind of like, it's funny because they claim that it's a university, but it's not in fact a university to my knowledge anyway, but it's kind of set up that way where you go through a series of courses and then you get a certificate in order to pretty much validate that you have been trained in what he is teaching to teach them the same thing.
Interesting. So, and anybody can do that as long as you have the $25,000.
As far as I know, yes, there was no barrier to entry on that. If you got money and you got a pulse, take it.
Yeah, that sounds similar to Scientology. Ben, you might be freezing up a little bit. Do you have any other windows open on your computer that you can shut down so we can just grab as much of your internet speed as we can? You got anyone playing Xbox in your house? Shut it down.
Let me collapse some of this stuff. Absolutely.
Yeah, that'll usually help. It's interesting to me the correlations between Scientology and how it's set up and how Grant Cardone has chosen to set up his organization, because there's some similarities, but then there are places where it takes a definite turn. And that's why I think it's so interesting to go through what you went through, come out of that, and then be exposed to Scientology and all of that, and then kind of put the pieces together. So you were saying $25,000, you can become a Grant Cardone 10X coach.
Yes, absolutely. And to your point about like me connecting the dots on the Scientology, it is quite fascinating. I know you mentioned to me that it's kind of mind blowing to you that Grant doesn't talk about Scientology. So there are, after I separated myself and left, realizing like, wow, I am in a cult. I got to get out of here quick. Now I realized I started looking into Scientology because people started bringing it to my attention a little bit more. Thinking about it now, in the past, there was one time where a good friend of mine, Jose, brought it up to me and said, he learned everything from Scientology, right? But for some reason, it just didn't click with me. I had no interest in even looking into it. I almost thought it was harmless. I had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
But yeah, he never brings it up. I have never heard him bring it up at an event, an in-person event. At all the times I went to 10X headquarters in Aventura in person in a small little room of 50 people, several times a year, I've never heard him mention it.
That is so interesting to me because when you are a Scientologist, especially if you're a Scientologist who has a larger sphere of influence outside of Scientology, there is fully an expectation that you're recruiting and you're bringing people into Scientology. And I find it so fascinating that Grant Cardone doesn't seem to do that. He definitely dodges the questions about Scientology when he's doing interviews.
Right.
He jumps around that about as much as he jumps around whether or not he is an actual billionaire, which is a claim that he makes. But when he's directly asked about it, he dances around the question. What can you tell us about his organization? I look at it from the outside, not knowing much about it, and I think, okay, well, I mean, it looks successful. He puts out these glossy magazines, which I got this actually at my local post office. It was targeted to nonprofits. It was sent to nonprofits in my area. I'm assuming they bought a mailing list for nonprofits and sent it out to them. And there were multiple ones there. And the postal workers had a few things to say about it because they thought that was odd. And they interestingly had some familiarity with Grant Cardone and Scientology and the connection there. So what would you say about how you look at it and you go, well, it seems like he's making a bunch of money. He must be doing something right. He's helping other people making money. So where really is the issue?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. We live in a world where just being everywhere all the time, even that alone kind of gives people the sense that they're successful. I don't know why, but that does. And then on top of that, the things that you show people, right? They're only showing them walking on a beach in a nice house at all these events. You know, it's you're able to actually orchestrate what your audience is seeing. And so Grant does a very good job at that. And so he's perceived as exactly what you want him to be perceived as. And that's successful, a lot of money, a lot of things going on, a lot of people gravitating towards him. And in my opinion, yes, he does appear successful. He may be successful. He may or may not be a billionaire, but my opinion, just because I don't equate money with being successful personally.
Mm.
So just because somebody has made a lot of money and is, perceived to be successful in that regard, doesn't mean that they did it in an unethical way, and they pretty much are doing things that should be legal, in my opinion.
Sure. So you're saying, I mean, tell me your take on it, because how many years did you work within the Cardone organization?
About 3+ years. I was, drinking the Kool-Aid a little bit longer than that, but as far as being an actual 10X business coach, it was about 3 years. Yeah.
3 years. And in that 3 years, you're saying that you never heard him talk about Scientology, share about Scientology, credit anything that he was doing to Scientology.
Never once.
Okay,
Why?
this is interesting because if you ask Scientologists who know him on the inside, it's a different story. He's a great example of a Scientologist. He's out there showing how great Scientology is and disseminating Scientology, which is a phrase Scientologists use, and exposing so many people to Scientology. But the truth is, he's not.
He's not. And what's crazy to me is that I think he actually has a better impact in in promoting Scientology without even saying it, by not bringing it up. And I made this connection because I only learned about Scientology probably 6 to 8 weeks ago when I watched a documentary on it. I didn't know what it was prior to that at all. And so my mind, you can imagine, was a little bit blown. And not only that, I was connecting so many dots with how that organization is very, very similar. And pretty much that whole organization has adopted and modeled and mimicked what Scientology does, how they behave, how they do those things, and applied it to business. So I think someone made the comment on one of the podcasts I did recently that he's turning people into Scientologists without even saying it. And when they said that, I was like, wow, that's exactly what he's doing. So I think he actually is doing a better job doing that, because I think he would actually turn people off if he was so outspoken about it.
That's true. What can you give us a few examples of what that looks like when you say that Grant Cardone uses Scientology in his business, the similarities that you saw between how things work in Scientology and in his organization, how he behaves and what he has created?
Yeah, so the levels, that's very similar, as far as there's never an end to the courses you can buy. There's always a level. It's this imaginary promised land of eventually reaching. You never know when that comes, though. And it's like, oh, okay, you buy a $40,000 course and you're like, hey, I actually wanted to learn a little bit about this. And they're like, oh yeah, that's this course. It's $5,000 for that course. And it's just like over and over and over. And so you get sucked into that. And when you become a 10X business coach, not only do you get sucked into that, you pretty much do the same thing. You're taught to do the same thing to other people, and round and round and round it goes. So that's one example.
It sounds a little bit like, tell me this, Ben, is it like a multi-level marketing type setup? Because it sounds like you become a coach to sell your services to other people and get them to become a coach. Do you get a cut? Do your downlines get a cut in that way financially? Do people benefit by bringing people into the 10X community?
No, so it's not. The only thing that's not relative, it's kind of similar with the MLM and a pyramid scheme, but it's not in the sense that you don't pretty much recruit and then those people, you get a cut and commission from those people to recruit or do business. It's not relative in that sense, but when you pitch and promote and sell, you do get a commission from whatever you're selling that Grant Cardone has, if it's his course or an event, then you get a cut of that. So not necessarily the same. And I think they do that because they're just like, wow, we're not going to do that. I think they make more money without that pyramid aspect to it, to be honest. And that's probably why they don't do that part when it comes to MLM.
So when you sell somebody on another Cardone service, so like, let's say you came in, you did the $25,000 training to become a 10X coach, and then you get somebody else to do the $25,000 training to become a 10X coach. What is the commission that's paid on that?
It's different. And so some of it's like, it's funny because the way it was pitched to me was that it was a 90-10 split, I believe. It was a big commission, right? Like we get 90%, they get 10%. But then I found out once I started selling stuff, they're like, oh yeah, you didn't read the fine print. It's actually only select things that you sell that it's a 90-10 split. Other than that, it's a 20-80 split. You get 20 or something like that. It was completely backwards from what it was actually being pitched as.
Wow. So there's definitely a bait and switch element that's going on to it.
Definitely.
What was happening within the organization and with you that you started thinking, maybe this is not exactly where I should be?
Yeah, so I love this question and talking about this without getting into like spirituality. A lot of people, when I first came out about this and started calling him out and being very direct and outspoken and using his name, a lot of people, you can imagine, know me in that community. I still have a lot of friends in there. And they were wondering what happened. Like, oh gosh, I got to find out like what happened. Let's get the scoop on this. They're all reaching out to me. And the thing about it is it was nothing that happened that was like, that's the last straw. It was actually a spiritual moment. I had many of them prior to this. About 2 weeks prior to that, me making that decision, I had a massive spiritual moment after another. It was like a series of things happening to me without, like I said, going deep into this and leading people to believe that I'm in a different cult now. I had these moments that were connecting dots for me in life. And so one of the things that happened to me was the only way I can explain it is that I felt this need to sit down and pay attention to all the red flags that I have ignored over the last few years. And they all just kind of hit me all at once. It's kind of like that moment where, people describe your life flashing before your eyes. Yes. That's what happened to me. It was literally like 20 different moments that I could clearly, vividly remember over the years. Some that happened, 2-3 years ago. And at the moment it felt wrong. I didn't know why. I just kind of put it in the back burner. I was talking myself into, thinking I was overreacting. But when I clearly sat down and thought about it, it was an aha moment, and the dots were connecting. I was like, wow, how was I so brainwashed that I ignored that? And I didn't even I just brushed that over. It was quite remarkable.
I know nothing about that. It does sound very familiar. Can you share with us some specific examples of what these red flags were?
So there's big examples and then small, what might seem like small things are like, oh, okay, whatever. That's not a big deal. And I like, for instance, I talk about this one moment where I went to a gala, 10X gala, where Grant was throwing on a fundraising event to raise money for kids growing up without fathers, right? Sounds like a good cause, right?
Mm-hmm.
I brought my 9-year-old daughter at the time, very small event, about 200 people or so in this small little cocktail party area. And at the end of it, Grant was down doing pictures with everybody and stuff. And we're all getting pictures, him, my daughter. And then at one point, Grant has this DJ that he always uses, DJ Irie for the Miami Heat. And he was up there DJing, and Grant was down on the floor, and he was trying to get his attention. And I was standing right next to Grant, and he literally just like threw a pen at his head. And it was when I say throw a pen, it wasn't anything soft. It was like a high pitched fastball at his head. And it just was so weird to me. And it literally, he didn't see his head, like turned at the last moment. It flew right by his head. But the look he gave after he did it, he just like threw it. And then he stopped and looked around to see if anybody looked at him. I don't know why, but that feeling of him knowing that he just did something that was really off. I seen his reaction. I seen what he did. And I'm like, that's supposed to be his friend. And I'm like, man, that could have really like took his eye out. I'm not even kidding.
Yeah.
It was that fast. So one small example, right? But then there's just the whole customer service, the lack of customer service. Once you give them thousands of dollars, tens of thousands of dollars, and then you try to ask for assistance, it is really this whole ghosting, lack of communication. The level of care really diminishes substantially once they actually get your money, which is a huge red flag to me, especially as someone who has grown my business based on customer service, donating time, actually caring for people. I was already successful before I met Grant. And so when I started learning these deceitful ways that he was trying to teach me, it really, again, another red flag I ignored.
Yeah. When you say deceitful ways, like, can you give me a specific example about that?
Yeah. So to me, asking hard questions, like, pressing, forcing, negotiating, closing, follow up, and then more follow up to where it's like borderline harassment. In sales, to me, that is deceitful, and the type of questions that they taught me to ask people to kind of coerce them into making a decision, more importantly, into getting them to make a business decision and buy something that they either, one, didn't want flat out, or two, weren't sure about. That's deceitful to me. Really?
What were they buying? What's the service that they were buying?
Courses, mainly courses.
Courses that then would lead them to be able to handle their business better, or courses like the position you were in where you were going to become a 10X. What do they call it? A
10X business coach, a Grant Cardone licensee is what it used to be called.
Okay.
But mainly the courses to scale business. That's what they're really selling. Is like you learn, we're going to show you how to pass through these break points you're going to hit in your business, right? And then it's a lot of fear-based tactics, right? Where like, if you don't get this, your business is going to suffer. You need this, you should do this, or you're never going to elevate, you're never going to scale, and you're going to end up losing your business. It's all that type of deception.
Yeah. Did you find that? So in Scientology, one thing that's done in Scientology is they call it finding the person's ruin. So you find out what's ruining their life, you rub their face in it, and you get them to realize that they need Scientology, or that situation is not going to resolve. It could be that you're not getting along with your spouse, you've got butthole kids, just whatever it is that's ruining your life. Is it similar to that, in that, if you don't handle this with your business, it will fail, you will lose your entire life, you will be humiliated, therefore you need Cardone services and these courses to save you?
100%. That's exactly how it's done. And another aspect of that is like, not only if you don't do this, this is going to happen, or if you don't do this, this is not going to happen. The other thing is, it's almost seed planting. I described the moment where I actually was first introduced to Grant through one of his books. I was listening to his audiobook, and I was doing quite successful in my business. It was actually during COVID, when fear, doubt, and uncertainty was at an all-time high.
Yeah.
But I was still doing pretty good. And here I am listening to this audiobook, and he's saying things like, you're operating at low levels. And I'm thinking to myself, I am. You're not doing the most you can. I'm like, I'm not. Yeah, you have more potential in you. I do. Some of these and some of these could be a good message, right? But those are just kind of meant to hook you. Once
Yeah.
they get you in there, that whole approach changes. But the seed planting thing isn't really talked about enough. And that's kind of what happened to me. Although I was doing well, I can honestly admit that I had a little, I mean, who didn't have uncertainty, especially in business during the pandemic? And
Yeah.
so that little bit is all it takes for these guys to prey on that and pretty much, do what they do best as a self-serving entrepreneurial vulture, as I like to call. And they're meant to come in your life at your worst time.
Mm. Also sounds very similar to Scientology and how Scientology operates.
That's
So as
right.
someone who spent 3 years within the Cardone organization and you got fairly high up in the courses and the things that you could do, you were in face-to-face meetings with him. So you spent a lot of time with the guy, and I'm assuming with his wife as well. What your overall take on the organization? Do you think it is, they're just kind of preying on people and it is a scam and more like a cult, or do you think there's any validity in it? How would you describe it today?
It's definitely a cult. Yes. Call it what you want. There's definitely unethical ways of treating people and false promises.
Mm-hmm.
Everything about it is, in my opinion, a scam. Yes. There are some people who may have done well with it, but does that mean they did it in an ethical way? What does doing well mean? Is
Yeah.
that going back to me? Like, I don't equate money with being successful. How did you get the money? How did you treat the people in the process? Because if you're stomping on people, you're treating them like shit along the way, that's not successful to me.
Mm.
That's not the way you treat people, and you don't deceive and manipulate just to get money at all costs and ruin people's life. You got to realize, ever since I've done these podcasts, I get messages every single day. Every day I get a message from somebody with the story about Grant Cardone. Anything from, I just had one yesterday, but I've heard, anything from, hey, Grant Cardone ripped off my grandma for $100,000, got her to pull out her 401k. Yesterday, a woman was talking to me about how her husband was getting caught up in the Kool-Aid. She was just going with him. And again, another 100K for them. And she realized everything I was talking about was connecting dots for her. So this is not a coincidence. I get messages like this every day talking about these experiences. And I realize, I'm one of few who are talking about it for several reasons. But I'll definitely be the voice for people just because I'm not scared of the guy.
Yeah. Why do you think other people, because tell me this, in your time there and even afterwards, are you familiar with other people who came to that same realization and left the organization?
There's a couple, but they will not talk about it. So there's several reasons now, looking back on why I stayed in the organization, why I can still see some friends still in the organization. And this is definitely part of Scientology now, from what I gathered. First of all, there's the embarrassment part. I honestly think out of all the reasons, the embarrassment is probably the number one reason why people won't talk about it.
Yeah.
I thought it was fear, fear of being sued, fear of being looked at differently, but I don't think that's it. I think it really is the embarrassment. It's not fun to talk about, like, hey, I spent $200,000 with this guy and it was the biggest waste of time. I didn't get my money back. I was deceived. I was manipulated. I was taken advantage of. That's not a fun thing to talk about for most people. But that's the main reason. The other part is the fear. Obviously, a lot of people, he's out here suing people for $100 million left and right. I think he's suing John Legere, the ex-CEO of T-Mobile, so all that. And he's, making all these threats. He's suing people left and right. So that doesn't bother me. The other thing is not fitting in. That is a huge one too. Having this community of people that are really just feeding off each other with the same energy and having that friend-like aspect, they're afraid to let go of that, or they think they can't keep the friendships. Or if they disconnect, ironically, that's a Scientology term, but if they leave the organization, they're afraid that they're not going to have that community anymore. And that's a big part of it as well.
That is a big part of it. And it can be a very deep part when it comes to leaving a cult, just like within Scientology. What is his wife's involvement within the organization? What role does Elena Cardone play?
So recently, in the last couple of years, I think she went and got her real estate license. And so she's got more into the real estate part of it with EXP. EXP is a partnered company. that, and I think you're a realtor too, right? So you
Yeah.
know EXP. So yeah, EXP is in partnership with Cardone, unfortunately.
This is really interesting because I don't know if you know, but EXP is undergoing some pretty serious lawsuits right now.
Wow. No, I
And
didn't know that.
yes, EXP, there's an article that came out in the New York Times not that long ago, and where basically several women who were realtors within EXP experienced being drugged and SA'd by their male coworkers or people at these hype events that they would have that EXP would have. EXP is a real estate brokerage, but it's very much like it's a very different kind of business. The New York Times called it an MLM.
I was just about to say that. I believe it's an MLM structure, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an MLM structure. It was the New York Times or the New York Post. I forget which one. And these lawsuits were because these women came forward and they told their brokers who did nothing. And they told higher ups who did nothing. So it's not just that it happened, it's the fact that they did nothing to fix it and correct it, and that women were being violated this way and nothing was being done about it. In real estate, primarily realtors are independent, they're 1099. There's not really an HR kind of a thing. And this has been an issue in the industry for a long time. And it just blew up. I mean, it was just in the last 8 weeks, I think, with EXP. So I think it's interesting
Wow.
that that's who she has her license with. And it's very much an MLM type setup.
Yeah, that is fascinating. So yeah, Glenn Sanford, I believe, is the owner and CEO, and he came to 10X Growth Conference one year and talked. And he actually, ironically, is from where I am from, Bellingham, Washington, where I have property over in Bellingham right now with the tribe. That's where my tribe is.
Nice.
Yeah, that's what John is. It's a Native American last name. So, but yeah, it's definitely MLM structure. And to answer your question about Elena Cardone, you know, I really got a taste of how messed up Elena Cardone is and how deep into the Scientology. So that's going back to one of your earlier questions. What is some of the things they do to indicate that they treat people the same way Scientology treats people? The whole victim blaming thing.
Yeah.
That is a very common thing in that organization. And I don't know if you caught that story, but one of my, friends who's still in the organization, I can't name drop her, unfortunately, but she was telling me a story when I came out of this. She was one of the people I got on a call with, and I was telling her, hey, there's all these red flags going on, and I want you to pay attention. Like, this is complete garbage, and it's deceitful, and it's not the way to treat people. You're a good person. I can tell you got a good heart. So it just doesn't seem like you're probably in alignment with this. And then she told me that story about Elena Cardone.
Yeah, share that story with people, because a lot of people who are here probably have not heard it.
Yeah, and again, I got to emphasize, it's not my story. I was not there, but my friend who is an associate in that organization still, and she's still in it, so she has no reason to lie about it. She's a very good-hearted woman I've known for a few years, and she told me, she's sitting here sobbing, crying as she's telling me the story too, by the way. But she said she was in the room with Elena Cardone at one of these events. They have breakout rooms where they kind of gather like 100 people or so and try to pitch more and upsell. That's all they do at these events: upsell, upsell, upsell. And she was in there. Elena Cardone was talking. She made the statement that everything that's happened to you in your life is your fault. And a woman stood up and flat out told Elena Cardone, I was raped. Are you saying that was my fault? And Elena Cardone didn't skip a beat and said, yes. And nobody said anything. My friend who's telling me this story is the only one, apparently to her knowledge, that got up and had to leave the room because she was so overwhelmed with emotion about this. But I don't know about you guys, but I have a sensitive spot with that. My sister, who, bless her soul, she's passed away now. She had something like that happen to her too in her life. And it really devastated her life because she didn't get the help that, I think she needed to help her get past that.
Yeah.
Or deal with it, whatever you call it. I don't know what the best way to put that is.
Yeah.
But I'm real sensitive to that. And telling somebody that it's their fault that they were raped is just completely heartless. And more specifically, you don't even know that person's situation. Yeah. How could you ever say that about somebody you know nothing about, right? Mm-hmm. So yeah, definitely another way. The whole victim blaming is terrible. And I don't, and the whole bullying part, that's a sense of bullying too. And so I'm on to all of these tactics and how they really structure and treat people to hook them and lead them to think like, hey, I'm telling you this because I care about you. If you pay close attention, people I care about and the people that care about me, we don't talk to each other like that.
Yeah, that's so true. And I can see how, just like with Scientology, you just get caught up. You're kind of kept in this state of fight or flight where it's just your next, getting your numbers up in Scientology, getting your statistics up, meeting those targets, meeting those goals. It's so driven. And if you don't do it, it's kind of like the world's going to end. You're just kept in this fight or flight. And it sounds, with the bullying and with that kind of, like you said, what Elena Cardone shared on her point of view of that it is very similar that way. In fact, someone says, we'll grab some questions. Kim Watt says, Cardone sounds like cartel. I went, my Uncle Tony was in the Cardone.
Right.
Yep. And Kimberly's saying, always needing money. That seems to be the driving force too, similar to Scientology. It's just that whole always be closing. You're just always trying to sell somebody something. And it's very disheartening to hear the predatory practices within the Cardone organization that sounds similar to Scientology, in that they don't care how you come up with the money. Refinance your house, max out your credit cards, give us your child's 401k, or your 401k, or your child's college fund. It doesn't matter. You just need to give this money. Would they take it that far in the Cardone organization?
Oh, I don't think there's a limit at all. They do not care. If you go bankrupt to give them all your money, they're satisfied with that. And I got to share this story because this is just a story that was brought to me 2 days ago. One of my good friends who's still in that organization right now, he started liking some of my posts. And I was like, oh, okay, if he's liking some of my posts, something's going on here. So I reached out to him. I was like, hey, how's it going, buddy? It's been a while. He's like, dude, I'd love to catch up with you. I got some Cardone stories to share with you that I'm going through right now, similar to what you're talking about. And one of the things he said was that he walked up to Grant, because he's about 300K plus in on this too. He spent with that organization. And he walked up to Grant and told him this. He's like, man, I've spent a lot of money with you. And, I just wanted to, tell you that just to show you how much I support your movement and your mission and all that. And Grant literally just told him, wait till you spend $1 million, then you're getting in the big boys club. And he literally turned around and walked away from him.
Oh my gosh. It's, in many ways, it's more expensive than Scientology.
Right? It probably is. But how? And he said, he's like, dude, that made me feel like I was 2 inches tall. I have no idea. Like, that was the worst feeling ever, man. And then now he's trying to get a refund, and they're all giving him the runaround about, like, I got to talk to the higher ups, and he's still having to contact them. I talk about my story where I did that too, where they were like, yeah, we gotta talk to the higher ups. And I kept asking them, have you talked to the higher ups? What's the status? What's going on? Literally months of that. And they never got back to me, ghosted me finally. And I was like, you know what? Forget it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's terrible.
Yep. Kim Watts is saying, yes, I remember that feeling. It's like you get blindsided by your own ignorance. I feel like for me, it was cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of people are kind of commenting on that. Smooth Steve, SBTV in New York, says Grant doesn't have friends. He has 10x bros.
Yeah, that's a good point, actually. I don't think they're real friends. They just, I've been in the room with, people who weren't middle class people to people that were already highly successful. And it can happen to the best of them. Most people are in there spending thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, just in hopes of getting a picture with the man. He's literally glorified like a god. I'm not even kidding. It's that intense.
Wow. Maybe that's why he doesn't really promote Scientology in his organization, because he knows he's creating, it'd be competition. These people would not have the money to give him if he turned them over to Scientology.
Right. He became Xenu.
Yeah.
It's quite remarkable though, but looking back on it now, yeah, some of the conversations I've had with people, you can tell how engrossed they are with him as a person and how they view him by just asking the simple question, like, is there anything he says that you don't agree with? I've asked people this before, and they literally have a hard time thinking of anything. It's like, yeah, something's there, give me some time. I'll think about it. That's crazy.
Wow. Denise says, how is Cardone not fair gaming him? So in Scientology, fair game is like when the Scientology will go at people and try to discredit them as critics, spread rumors, false things about them, things like that. Is that, have you experienced any of that with the Cardone organization?
So no, they just blocked me. I did realize there are some people in the organization who have not blocked me yet. And so I think I just called out one of them the other day because he's like one of the top sales reps for Grant, and pretty much ripped off my girlfriend the same way, made her a bunch of false promises. She spent like, I think $7,000 with him. And then he said, you get direct access to me when you invest in me. And then literally she was texting him right after that. He responded once or twice and then ghosted her and never.
Wow. So these people are selling consulting services. Is that what it is?
That as well, absolutely.
And literally not delivering.
Yes, that is happening 100%. That was another story I got yesterday from the woman and the man that the husband she was following. She said the same thing. This guy promised her one-on-one consulting and he just would not get back to her.
Wow. So what ends up happening if people just demand their money? Do they get refund? How does the organization handle that? Do they recognize that, hey, we're not delivering what we've promised on here? Because I can't imagine that most people are just going to walk away from $7,000 even.
Yeah. So the thing about it is you can't, right? I hear this all the time, especially with the frequency of podcasts I'm doing. They're like, where's the facts at? How can you prove this? The tough thing about that is like, how are you going to prove that? Like, how am I going to prove that, like, look, this guy said that they would do this one-on-one coaching, using that as an example, right? Let's say I paid $10,000 and I get one-on-one coaching. How am I going to prove, other than just like a series of text message, maybe empty text messages? There's really no way to prove that. And that's one of the things that they're taking advantage of, is that you can't really prove that very much.
Wow.
And so that they really try calling you a hater and put you in that box. Or, hater is just another word for suppressive person for them.
Exactly. It sounds like it. Are you aware of other people who are Scientologists within the organization or that are close, in Grant's inner circle at all that are Scientologists?
No, not because, again, they don't talk about it. So you can imagine if Grant's not talking about it, most other people are not talking about it as well.
Yeah. And I know it's because he knows if Scientology gets their hands on him, these people can't be spending all this money. It is direct competition. Frankly, here's what I'm most blown away by: how David Miscavige allows it. He must be donating huge amounts of money. I know that he has in the past to Scientology for David Miscavige to just let him build his own cult over there.
Yeah, well, Aaron talked about this. I don't know how he's getting this information, but he did make a statement that Grant Cardone is one of the biggest contributors to Scientology. And I believe that, me talking about these, I stood up and I went in that $40,000 program. I talked about this before. They had an upsell offer of $400K. You can go into this, what they call platforming, and they're going to take your business to the promised lands in the heavens. And I literally seen about 10 people take that offer in that room that day. And they do those events all the time.
Oh my gosh. That is just that's really bad. Auntie Harshu saying, Ben John, what made you interested about this space? Was it more something that made you want to do it, or rather not wanting to have anything to do with it?
So if I'm kind of confused on the question, but if he's talking about what made me get into the organization,
let's just start there. What made you get into the organization in the first place?
Yeah, so I talked a little bit about that as far as the inception and the seed planting and the statements that were being placed in my head while I was listening to the audiobook.
Yeah.
That happened. A lot of people make the claim that it's greed. If there was greed, it was at the bottom of the list of reasons why. I can honestly tell you that. It was, the connection with him. He talks about his dad and how he passed away when he was 10. Although my dad didn't pass away when I was 10, my dad hasn't been in my life since I was 3. So the lack of mentorship in my life made me kind of gravitate towards that too. And it felt like he cared. He hit you in the feels with that story. And that's another way of hooking you. So it was a combination of just maybe wanting to really grow the business and also have someone that can guide me is kind of what tracked me.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Patty's saying such a traumatic thing to go there and then to be told it's your fault in front of hundreds of people. So she's referencing to the woman who was essayed, and Elena Cardone told her that it was her fault. Jessica Christine, so sad to think of how Grant's kids are growing up with a mother like that. To blame a woman who was essayed for being essay is disgusting. Yeah, especially with daughters, because don't they have daughters?
They do. Yeah.
Mm.
And you can imagine how indoctrinated they've become with the Scientology. You know, the other example of, and me and Matt Cox talked about this on his podcast. Grant does this all at his events. He talks about the people in the back of the room. Literally makes fun of the people in the back of the room at the event for not in the front of the room. And of course, it costs $10,000 to $20,000 to get in the front of the room.
What? You got to pay more money to sit in the front?
Yes, I've done it. That's how brainwashed I was. I talked about that experience where I bought a front row ticket for me, my girlfriend, and my daughter. It was about $24,000. And yeah, they do that. They shame you for being in the back of the room at the event. So you're paying to be made fun of. You're showing up, and I mean, it's belittling you in this process. It's quite remarkable to see.
Wow, that is crazy. Laura Flynn saying, so basically, people buying into this are actually supporting the cult of Scientology since Grant gives the money to Scientology.
Exactly.
And that's true. That's true. What the big dog music is saying right here. He's paying Scientology not to come after him. That has to be how it is. And for me, as an ex-Scientologist, really tells me how far David Miscavige himself has gone, in that you're just, as long as you have the money coming in, you're going to look the other way. Back in the day when I was my early days in Scientology in the 80s, this just would not have been allowed. I mean, it would have been like, well, are you disseminating? Are you bringing people into Scientology? It would be seen as competition, and definitely at the level that he's doing it. So it has to be because he is the largest, or one of the largest donors to Scientology.
Yeah, from what I've gathered, Scientology just cares about money, and they'll go through at any cost, hurting people, deceiving people, destroying them, sexually assaulting them, whatever it takes. They will do whatever it takes to get that money. So if Grant's pumping in that much money, I'm sure they're willing to sweep some stuff under the rug to get that money.
Wow. That is just so crazy. The more and more, like when I told you we were starting this, I'm like, I don't know a ton about his organization beyond what I hear in claims of it being a cult and predatory behaviors and taking advantage of people financially, a lot of the ways that Scientology does as well. And it makes perfect sense. And I guess that's the simplicity of it, is he's taking what he learned in the cult of Scientology and those techniques, and he's applying them in the business world, building it up and paying off Scientology to let him keep doing it.
It's quite remarkable. Yeah. And before I forget to bring this up too, because this is another validation to me and another dot connection for me. I believe it was in regards to the woman who brought up the fair game thing, because I've never heard that term yet.
Yeah, yeah.
But there is another good friend of mine who's still in the organization in a different country. And she's been, loving my content. She's not really a big Cardone fan at all, but she did pay into it, and she still kind of promotes it a little bit, which is quite crazy. But she was telling me that they reached out to her, like 2 people from the organization reached out to her and were telling her like, hey, we noticed that you're following and liking a lot of Ben's content in regards to him calling us out. What's up with that? Like, are you in alignment with all that? Like, they were really trying to press her and also suggest that she should disconnect from me, or me being a suppressive person. And I've talked about this before. She's such a outspoken individual, and she really is firm. And so thank God she didn't disconnect from me. And she was like, you guys can piss off. Like, I can like whoever I want, be friends with whoever I want. But they tried to put that pressure on her to disconnect from me, which is quite remarkable. So yes, they know who I am. They know what I'm doing. And I'm just small fish too, so it's quite remarkable. It means I'm doing something right.
Yeah, and I'm glad that you're doing it and you're speaking out about it and you're being, just really sharing about it because I think not enough people know. And that bullying and this just, well, I'm going to sue this person, sue that person, that arrogance that both he and his wife carry around are just so nasty because it's like you are literally hurting people. You're hurting them financially. You're exploiting their dreams, their desire to have help, very similar to Scientology. And on top of it, you're giving humongous amounts of money to Scientology to let them keep you doing it. So I know I appreciate that you're speaking out and you're continuing to share your story. Can you share the best place people can go if they would like to connect with you?
So the best place to see what I'm doing is primarily Instagram. It's Benjamin John MIC.
Okay.
Very active on that. And then you can usually reach out to me. There's my links to landing page, and you can always schedule a call with me if you want to get to know me. I'm always making time for people. And so, yeah, Instagram's the spot for me, and Facebook too, but primarily Instagram.
Yep. So people can find you on Instagram. Well, I just appreciate so much that you're just here sharing about this because it's so eye-opening. I'd like to see more people come out of that organization and actually use their voice for some good and show what's happening in there because again, it's just another funnel of a large amount of money. Huge, like again, he's the largest or one of the largest donators to Scientology. And this is what's happening. He's making all this money and giving a lot of it to Scientology to then do their dirty work.
Yeah, and I'm onto it, and I have no fear in calling him out, and that's the advantage I have. I'm
Yeah.
very, I talked about all these spiritual moments, and one of the spiritual moments I got was that I'm in a modern day David and Goliath situation,
Mm.
and so in order to fulfill that, I can't really have fear. Like I got to go at this. It's not about me. It's about impacting other people and bringing awareness to the red flags that are very obvious to them. So I'm not here to really bury Grant, like, or even talk bad about him. Like, and ironically as that sounds, that's not my agenda. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
I think he's just lost and misguided and really a lost leader with false confidence out here damaging people. So that's what I'm really trying to bring awareness to.
Yeah, I love that. And we share that goal because it's very similar with Scientology as well. I so appreciate you coming on and doing that and sharing that. It just, I just wish more people would do it. I hope that they do. And it really it speaks a lot to there's so many people, most people who follow my channel have never been in Scientology, never been in, but they're fully in it for the support and recognizing and understanding how cults work and how people can be sucked into them without their knowing. Especially in your situation, I think it's such an eye opener and helps people see more. And it seems so common for people like Grant Cardone, for people like the guy who started and ran Nexium, where they studied Scientology. They took these things from Scientology and went and created their own cults. And they all need to be stopped. They all need to be stopped, and people need to be aware of what those tactics are, how it makes you feel, and what you should be watching out for. So
Yeah,
I appreciate it, Ben. Thank you so much for coming and chatting about this for sure.
absolutely. It was my pleasure. And yeah, keep your eyes peeled. I'm not done. And I appreciate you inviting me on here to kind of peel back the layers on this and share my experience.
Definitely. Hold on just a sec, Ben. I'm going to do my wrap up here. I'm just going to put you in the green room. Thank you again for being here.
All right. You bet.
All right, everybody. You can reach me, Natalie at lifeafteraccult.com. If you know of somebody in and around this community that you think would make a great interview as well, let me know because there's so many stories like this that just really shed light on the whole thing with cults, whether it's Scientology or Scientology adjacent, like it is in this Grant Cardone organization. Bad Thayton, thank you. I am a never in, but I love your channel. Thank you. Thank you for being here. It's so much of you, I keep saying it, never in, who are turning the tide and opening eyes and raising awareness about Scientology. That's the way that we're going to do it. Tinger Mom, Natalie, do you write out your questions beforehand? So on point and on the ball in this interview. You're such a natural. Thank you so much. That's so sweet. Sometimes I do. Sometimes, in fact, most of the times I don't when it's an interview, but I do have an idea of what my questions are. but I like to see where it goes. I like to find out what that person wants to share and see what questions the chat has as well, which is why I like to do these live, actually, to get your feedback and see what your questions are. But I usually have an idea. I just kind of go with what I'm curious about. So please hit that subscribe button and hit that like button. I'd really appreciate it. We are trying to get we're playing the birthday game here. L. Ron Hubbard's birthday is March 13th, and I am giving him in Scientology, we all are, the gift of expansion, straight up and vertical. We're shooting for hitting 20,000 subscribers by then. I know we will in March one way or another, but it's just fun to do it for L. Ron Hubbard's birthday because it's petty and I'm here for that. So thank you everybody so much. I will talk to you later. In the meantime, get out there and have the most amazing cult-free day.